In my previous Is Jesus Real Part 1 video, we established something really important. That multiple historians who are not Christians from different cultures and even hostile towards Christianity wrote about Jesus. They confirmed his existence, his persecution, and his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. That means that the life and death of Jesus are not just biblical claims. They are historical facts that cannot be ignored. But here's what makes them even more interesting and is the plot twist. That these exact same historians didn't just write that Jesus died. They recorded what his followers believed after his death. They documented that early Christians claimed to have seen Jesus alive after his crucifixion. They also claimed that they worshiped him as the divine, and they were willing to suffer and die rather than deny him. And that matters, because many religions claim truth, and many followers are willing to die for beliefs passed down to them. But look, these first Christians were different. They weren't dying for stories they heard later. They were dying for what they claimed to have personally witnessed. Look, and it is true. People will die for what they believe. We know that. History shows that as well. But no one is willing to die for what they know is an absolute lie. Would you? I know I wouldn't. And this is where history becomes uncomfortable, because these records do not come from the Bible. They come from outside sources. Who were these sources? Roman officials, Jewish historians, Greek philosophers, and cultural critics. All of them non-Christians. None of them, not a single one of them. Most of them actually mocked Christianity, and many of them thought that Christianity was a threat to society. Yet they all confirmed the same core facts. Tacitus, a Roman senator and a historian, records that Jesus was executed under Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. Pliny the Younger, a Roman governor, describes Christians gathering to worship Christ as God and refusing to deny him, even after threat of death while they're being tortured. Suetonius, another Roman historian, mentions disturbances among Jews connected to Christus. He's referring to the early Christian movement, of course. Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian, writing on the Roman authority, confirms that Jesus lived, was crucified, and his followers continued after his death, and that it exploded after his death. And then we've got the Babylonian Talmud, acknowledging Jesus was executed and attributes extraordinary acts to him even while rejecting his claims. Lucian of Samosata, a Greek critic of Christianity, mocked believers for worshiping a man who had been crucified. Marbar Serapion, a Syrian philosopher, refers to the execution of the wise king of the Jews, whose teachings lived on even after his death. These are all different cultures, different motives, different worldviews, yet all of them record the same thing: that Jesus existed, that he was crucified, that his followers believed he rose from the dead because many of them claimed to have seen him, that they worshiped him as the divine, and they were willing to suffer and die for that belief. Look, history doesn't debate whether Jesus was real. History establishes that Jesus was real. Instead, it documents that something happened that transformed these believers of Christ into bold witnesses who no longer feared death. And that leads to one question. What could possibly explain that transformation? Well, in part 3, we're going to look at one explanation history just cannot ignore: the resurrection. Because if Jesus did not rise from the dead, then his movement, logically, should have died with him. But it didn't. If anything, his movement grew to a point that it exploded, and history demands an explanation. Jesus' impact was so big on the world that we even measure history in his name. Before Christ, Annum Deum, the year of the Lord. So we need to look at this not just from history, but also from a biblical standpoint. He existed, he did die, he was crucified, and all of his followers who were there when he was crucified, they eyewitnessed that he resurrected, and it is documented in history. I pray this helps. God bless.